So we've discussed the timeline of events. So while in any market, you're going to have bears and you're going to have bulls, right? So while the housing market bubble bears, so to speak, predicted a market crash due to the COVID crisis, really what happened is the exact opposite. Home price growth is accelerating faster than what feels comfortable or, quote unquote, appropriate for nominal home price growth. The housing market's current strength isn't really because of COVID. It's despite it. If you really think about it, I mean, demographics plus low mortgage rates service that kind of 1-2 punch that has pushed our market to new heights, not just locally, but regionally, nationally. And in 2018 and 2019, there was a point in time when mortgage rates rose up to 5%. And all it did was cool down price gains in the existing housing market. The impact on the market at that point in time was very noticeable and frankly, probably a healthy and needed event. But the question remains, will all this strength in the housing market dampen or erase the risk of having all these homes in forbearance once forbearance ends? So I want to give you guys some things to think about. Number one, which we've kind of already discussed with the latest data from Black Knight, which again is a premier provider of data and analytics for mortgage and home equity lending and servicing. I mean, it very clearly shows us that the number of homes in forbearance has been decreasing. I mean, we're well off of the peak in the summer of last year, which was a little under 4.5 million homeowners in some form of forbearance. And I expect that number to continue to go down, but there is going to be a lag in the data as jobs come back online. And we've talked about this. We've talked about how real estate in and of itself is a lagging indicator of the economy. Just like forbearance numbers and foreclosure rates are going to be a lagging indicator of jobs. So there's good news there in that forbearance numbers are going down. The second is just the overall credit profiles of buyers and people refinancing for mortgages. I mean, these buyers, especially those who purchased from 2010 to 2017, have fixed low debt costs due to low interest rates. We've got rising wages and a bunch of equity that's been built. We built over $1 trillion in equity in last year alone. And so as these home prices continue to grow beyond expectations, beyond what many in the market feel is just uncomfortable or slightly unnatural, these homeowners now have additional equity, another year of gains that they can draw from. That kind of helps them in their decision-making process. And so when we compare this to the overall credit profiles of people that were looking to buy, right before 2008, I mean, the comparison, frankly, is night and day. I mean, we were in a huge, debt leverage speculative market. I mean, I can tell you some stories, some crazy stories about some folks that I helped through short sales. I mean, in 2009, we were doing a lot of foreclosures, a lot of short sales. By 2011, it represented 30% of the market. I mean, right now, I think it's less than 3% of the market. Will that uptick a little bit? Sure. Be careful for outlets that report a percentage increase in the number of distressed properties, because the percentage increase is going to look staggering. A 200% increase in distressed properties at face value seems like a lot, but when you realize that it still only represents 5-6% of the overall inventory, it suddenly becomes not as big of a deal. But the third thing that I want you guys to focus on, I guess, and just think of as kind of the light at the end of the tunnel here is the fact that, jobs are coming back. We've gained over 12.5 million jobs since the very bottom, and that was not in the forecast from a lot of these experts, quite frankly. So if you look back to the February 2020 payroll data, which accounts for most workers, most employees, we had about 152 million employed workers. We got as low as 130 million, but now we're back to 142.5 basically million. So we're still short close to 10 million jobs, which, by the way, is more jobs than we lost during, the great financial crisis post 2008. So you're seeing negative jobs right now being reported, frankly, because yes, it's true, but it's also, that's the narrative that has the most impact. It's what news outlets deem newsworthy and impactful. But the reality is a lot of these jobs won't come back while COVID is still in full effect, because it limits some job sectors from operating at full capacity. Think about, hospitality as an example, a prime example. Food and bev, another great example. So, vaccinations will help, and they're on their way. But we still have what I think is, frankly, a long road ahead of us. And I think you guys would probably agree with that. Is everything happening in the market and everything that I've just described kind of a preamble to another market crash? That's the question. That's, and folks aren't tying all those pieces together. They're just hearing or watching or seeing, reports from folks that have learned how to gain a following on YouTube that know how to appeal to your emotions. We either run toward pleasure or away from pain, and the vast majority of marketing out there is geared toward running away from pain. And so, is this, again, a preamble to another market crash? I don't believe so. Demographics are better. Household balance sheets are healthier. Lending standards are still strict but accessible. And consumer confidence shows that people still believe now is a good time to buy and sell real estate. Now, having said that, if the jobs data continues to worsen and, we as a country, I guess, decide that it's just too expensive to help our American citizens in this crisis, then yes, we will likely see an uptick in distressed sales, which I think we're going to see anyways. The question is by how much and at what impact. So we're going to see an uptick in distressed sales and in forced selling. That we know. Again, the question is the volume. How much will it be? Even then, I still don't anticipate a crash. And I think that's the key word. And that's really what I want to focus on is crash. Crash is a word that creates fear. Are we going to crash? I don't believe so. Will things eventually soften? Yes. The pendulum always swings from left to right, buyer's market, seller's market over time. It doesn't stay in one direction forever. So at some point in time, the market will normalize. But right now, inventory is so incredibly low and demand is so incredibly high that prices are going up at ridiculous rates in some instances. People are paying ridiculous prices for property in some instances. And of course, for the person that has a level head and for the person that's, analyzing the data and also determining, the difference between what something is worth and then what they're willing to pay for it in a market when there's hardly anything available, that range, that gap between fair market value and what a buyer is willing to pay gets wider. That stretches. We've seen some folks where, almost every deal these days seems like it's in a multiple offer situation. And I know for buyers, that's extremely challenging. But we're seeing some buyers that are just paying silly prices for real estate. Obviously, it's their choice. Of course, you question whether that buyer is getting the guidance that they need, the consultation that they need, walking through the process, understanding everything, or if it's just another agent that just wants to get a deal done. I think that's the fear of a lot of consumers right now, is that they just don't know or can't trust or can't rely on the real estate agent to help them at least have peace of mind around the financial portion of the transaction. Because real estate in and of itself, from a residential standpoint, is emotional. It's personal in nature. It's not purely a business decision. When you're an investor, it should be. But people get wrapped up in the emotions of the transaction, and that sometimes leads to, obviously, a seller really winning because they find a buyer that's willing to pay top dollar more than what somebody else would be willing to pay for it just for the sake of winning the deal. And so when we're working with our clients, we're setting reasonable expectations about what's going to happen. When you buy a home, here's what that market looks like. Here's what that arena looks like. Let's prepare you for that fight. Let's make sure that we have all our ducks in a row. I talked last show about what you can do as a buyer to prepare when entering a market that heavily favors a seller. Just like as a seller, just because the market's good doesn't necessarily mean you should be taking a lackadaisical approach to selling because you understand or believe that, hey, someone's going to buy it regardless. I don't need to do anything to my property. I don't really need a real estate agent that's going to go above and beyond for me. The market's going to sell my home for me in a matter of days. I see it all the time. And that, I think, is a pitfall that people experience in a market like this. We'll talk about that a little bit when we come back. Stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And remember, if you want to reach out to me, you want to have a discussion about your plans to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. Of course, our team has been in the top 1% of agents here every year since 2009. We'd love to earn your business. Feel free to give me a call personally. My number is 843-400-8009. That's 400-8009. Or check us out online at listingsincharleston.com. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 9 and each Sunday morning at 10 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.